Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the Queendom Come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum, in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. This is Louis-Virie Blanche, and you're listening to Conversations with Elders. And we have Dr. Mosen with us, our hi-fi brother.
Hi, bye.
Yes, indeed. So we are going to discuss intention and impact.
Yes.
And I wanted you to mention this book that you had shared with me, The Law of Entropy and the Economic Process.
Yes, but Nicholas Georgisco Reagan, he has passed away, but that's probably one of my 10 most beloved books.
Because, you've spoken about what people thought the dawn of the age of Renaissance was this dawn of blossoming ingenuity, but in essence, it was different.
That's actually a piece by Victor Hugo, the French philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Industrial Revolution, which was the scientific aspect of the Renaissance, it was a sunset in humanity, human thinking, that everybody mistook for dawn. That's his exact statement. Yeah.
So entropy is ever increasing disorder.
Yes. And centropy is ever increasing order. So let's say, we have about 70 to 100 million cells. I was talking to the naturopath, in London. Our healing, this is very simple understanding. The process of healing, that means the order goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the process of disease and ailing is when the order goes down and resonance between the cells and the functions of heart and liver and all that is not there. So we are ill. And then we are in a state of germ theory because we are in a state of acidity. You have that chart, that we had. So if you are between 6.6 to 4.5, we are in the boundary of disease.
And the healthy pH factor is 7.4.
Yes, so there is two animals, that outside 6.6, 4.5, human is 7.4, dogs have 2.5. Yeah. So
was this a calculated effort, or did humanity make a mistake and not notice it?
Well, because it's been in the books, Confucius 5,000 years ago, my beloved Avicenna has been 1,000 years ago mentioned that, and Beauchamp, who was adversary of Pasteur. Pasteur is the one who started germ theory and pasteurization, as well as vaccination. So what happened is in 1892, he wrote a letter to Beauchamp, his adversary, and expressed that I was wrong and you are right. And 3 years later, he passed away. It was 1895 when Pasteur died. So, but by then, all of a sudden, pharmaceutical and all those people, they had adjusted, they had really cranked up, production of pharmaceutical and all that, the germ theory. So the germ theory is basically killing the germ, not adding to vitalization. So when we take these drugs, since they are energetic and not synergetic, even if they are same formula, if they are energetic, it has entropical effect, entropical impact. We'll talk about impact later. So in medicine, they call it iatrogenic diseases. I take a pill for my head, but all of a sudden my liver does not function. So iatrogenic diseases is that part of entropy, that sum of unknown nature.
The sum of unknown nature.
Because entropy definition is, entropy is the measure of disorder. Any solution to entropical problem is further and deeper entropy and sum of unknown nature. Iatrogenic diseases is that unknown nature of those drugs that people take. Therefore, all of a sudden, they have latent effect, latent impact. Because maybe the doctor or researchers, thought, this medicine is good. Maybe his intention was good. But the impact, it took about 30 years before we find the impact. And these are the effect of sum of unknown nature of entropical problems. So back to the opening statement that you made, health is increasing the order of the functions of our system. And then, this whole collective 70 trillion cells, they have innate longing for unity, to be a body of mine or yours. So
And
if that unity doesn't exist, it falls apart.
They have a magnetic quality to them.
Yeah, magneticity, yes. So therefore, this 70 trillion cells in my body and yours, and some people are bigger, you're bigger than me, maybe 80, 90. These 90 trillion, not million, billion cells, they have to resonate with each other, so you be as a one person. The unity of you or unity of me. And that's
so that
the nature
magnetism as theirs inspires them to be unified in their function.
Yes, you see, every cell is diverse. There is no two cells like each other. You have the cells of the kidney or livers and all that, not even within the same organ is the same. But that diversity has an innate longing. And if I don't respect it by the hosting that respect to that body, that organ or that body is ill. So ill basically, illing is the issue of vitality, vital vibration, instead of mutal oscillation, because oscillation destroys vibration. And there are many people, like, for example, Albert, what's his name? Albert, I had his name here. Albert Abram, who in 1800 was a medical doctor, created radionics, which is an oscillation. Robert Beck, in USC, created another device, Rife, that everybody knows about it. All of these, they created an oscillation, which is of the same magnitude and order of the function of those living organisms which are unfriendly, and they were in our body by my invitation. So that oscillation mutates the vibration, so it's not a hosting environment they leave.
So they can't RSVP.
Yeah.
They're not welcome.
Yeah. So that germ that we call him germ, and we really look down on him. I had a statement: don't look down on anything unless you want to lift them up.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Muhammad Ali used to say that phrase a lot.
He was oftentimes looking down on beings.
And knocking the foreman out and trying to lift him up. It was actually a funny statement. He used to smile about twice that I saw him at Berkeley. He used to smile about it. But anyway, the life of this germ, or this living organism, is as important to universe as mine and yours. Otherwise, God would have not been omni-justice to create that germ or that organism, which we look down on him as a germ. But it's a living organism. So each living organism has a boundary of vitality, a vital statement. So if it goes out of that boundary, then it's in mutated state or ailing state, and it's not vital. So therefore, human body has to be at that state of 7.4. So if I go out of my boundary, in the boundary of those living organisms, I'm hosting it. Simple as that.
Which is a welcome invitation for your body
Yeah.
to be hosting toxins,
So-
accumulating toxins.
What we do to others will be due to us. So if I kill all that mass killing of these organisms, which I invited them in my body by myself, by my collective or composite ignorance. I call
Fatal
it,
convenience,
yeah, composite ignorance.
composite ignorance. The t-shirt slogan.
Yeah.
I'm all
Yeah.
for composite ignorance.
Yeah. So
Why?
if I
Why is
invited
that
them,
so?
yeah, it's either composite or it's collective. A composite or collective ignorance of myself, I invited them in. Therefore, killing them has gonna have side effect. Just because they are small doesn't mean their life is not important as mine and yours. Just every life in creation and universe is sacred. Otherwise, God would not be omnijustice. So I can't go, by chemotherapy or radiation therapy and drugs and all that, kill them. Their curse will be on me. So my field is going to be full of curse.
So
Rather
you're
than-
creating a reciprocal process that actually, like, it pulses, right?
Yeah,
What you
What-
send out, you receive.
yeah. What we do to others will be due to us. So if I damage the life of a living organism, that living organism may be small with the, compared with the size of universe, me and them, we are same size. So if I kill them, there will be a hard feeling. They have kids, they have parents, they have families and all that. There is going to be a curse on us. Just because they are small doesn't mean they don't have life. Their life is actually more intricate. If you look at a bug or a fly or a butterflies and all that, tinier legs than ours.
So the quicker that we can surrender in submission to serving Creator and all creation, the better off we will
Yes.
be.
So we have to be host of healing praises. I mean, those organisms should be praying for me and you, for me to heal. If I damage them by energetic and tropical process, that will be latent effect on me. So now,
Again, the viruses they can't survive in an alkaline state.
no, because everything's in creation is created with respect to the boundary of the others. Just like, airplane has to go all at the same different elevation. The tower says, you go at this elevation from here to there. Now, if they go all at the same elevation, there's going to be collision.
Hmm? So we need variability, infinite variability.
Yeah, boundary. We have to respect each other's boundary. So the species, we have to respect the boundary of those other species. We can't just go and,
We talked about bridges, no walls,
yeah,
polarity, no duality,
yeah,
boundaries, no borders.
yes. So we have to respect the boundary of those living organisms. So therefore, I stay in my boundary.
And this allows the natural function of our electromagnetic field and flow to assimilate
Yes,
and
yeah.
not accumulate.
exactly. So we are in allocated field by a creator in our creation.
We're in an allocated, it's a divine allocation.
Yeah. So if I am in allocation of, let's say, cold virus. Then the cold virus, it multiplies in me, it fights me, and I'll have a cold.
Now, when you say we are in allocation with,
Yes. By creation, every living organism has an allocated field. Let's say physically allocated pH to survive and be healthy. We are allocated a boundary.
and that field is allocated by Creator.
Yes.
So when we edge God out, we're saying, I'm going to outthink you. I can outsmart your system, your
Yeah.
function by creating my own system.
See, that's what happened with Renaissance. We were talking earlier. Renaissance happened at the time, for example, I sent you a few pictures from, let's say, Galileo, or Copernicus from Poland, or Kepler from Germany. Until 14th, 15th century, even if all the holy books, they were saying, everything goes around itself in vortation and perfect proportion, which is phi. But still, there was this dogmatic opinion in Europe until 14th, 15th century that Earth was flat, and sun was going around the Earth. Now there's a problem with that. Now, if sun goes around the Earth, it has to go very fast to create 24 hours. Or is it going as slow that every 365 days it goes one time around the Earth? So one entity cannot have two motion at the same time. Either you're going faster, you're going slow. So if you go slow, you go fast, you make the 24 hours, and the sun goes fast. But if it goes slow, it goes one time in 1 year around, it has to go slow. So that doesn't make sense.
So which sun are we worshiping, the fast one or the slow one?
Yeah. So therefore, all of a sudden, God is the creator cannot be defined in any language. A scientific formula cannot prove God.
There's no mathematical equation for it.
Yeah. So since everything becomes scientific, I had to prove everything to be correct, and scientifically to say, okay, this is true. So I could not prove God scientifically, so I put God out of the affairs of all the human being. Now we started with Newtonian paradigm, which was Vedic paradigms of the ancients. So it was Newton, Descartes, and then it was Francis Bacon, philosopher, Descartes, the mathematician, Newton, the physicist, and then we had John Locke, Adam Smith, Karl Marx, and Theodore Herzl, and then Darwin. These 9 people. So they formulated a paradigm that God was not part of it, because it says if we cannot understand God, we can't formulate anything or create a science that we can understand and solve the problems. So God was put out. Tri-elemental science of quantum and metaphysics, which was a spirit, synergy, and matter, and they couldn't do anything with synergy. You have to service it. So I wanted to be in my power. So I created energy and matter. Oil, I can create energy and then matter, and create pharmaceutical, for example, matter. So all of a sudden that paradigm shift, it became materialistic paradigm. Now, in materialistic paradigm, everything is by a formula, and it's governed by that equation, which doesn't exist in creation. So all of a sudden, since I could not prove God, I created a new paradigm, which I call it scientific religion, legion to reality of science.
Legion to the realities of science.
Yeah. So science become a religion. That's why later on they created New Age. New Age is the religion of science, because you cannot prove. So you refer to it as the source, and the source is nothing but an input to a system. You see that?
Well, you know, when Galileo came up with his concept, it went against what the church believed.
He had to repent for it.
He was under house arrest for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I think there was some time after that, did the church actually make an apology to Galileo?
Well, it's just that they what happened, he had to repent.
But I thought he was defiant. He didn't repent.
No, otherwise he would have lost his head. So then next person was Copernicus, which was around 15th century. And Copernicus proved that Earth goes in a circle. I mean, Earth goes in a circle around the sun, which is orbit, which that doesn't even, but at least closer to reality. And then Kepler, later on came the German in 17th century and proved it, but he was scared to really publicize it. He put it in his will.
I'm honored you didn't he?
Yeah. So, but the thing is, until this medieval time, they still, you see that painter that I sent you, his painting, they still believed Earth was flat. And so what happens with your ship, you get to the edge.
Well, there's a resurgence of this concept now going around.
Well, that's Earth mentality, flat Earth mentality. Dr. Morter used to mention that. He says it's a flat spot in our thinking.
So the process that humanity has gotten itself into can be remedied and corrected.
Yes.
But, let's mention this law of entropy and the economic process.
Yes.
When did this really, when the Industrial Revolution took place, so we've been doing this for over 100 years?
Since 1800, 18th century, past 150 years, because everything becomes energetic. And energy is the process of matter to energy. Production of things and sustainability in creation is the process of synergy to matter, not matter to energy. See,
And where did this mind over matter idea come from?
Because that's the scientific mind. Because it's the mind that does everything to matter, and we can create everything. So it's not mind over matter. It's just hopefully it's the mind in surrender to synergy.
Right.
That's the scientific mind. Yeah.
Now we've said that nature has infinite variables. And science likes to limit the variables in order to repeat the process.
Yes. Well, I mean, since experimental, I can't have too many variables in my lab. I can do one at a time. So cohesion and conversion or integration of all the variables to work together is not there. It's like, my body, I say, okay, I only have my heart work and I stop the liver or the lungs and all that. There is no vitality. I only try to experiment on my heart, but I turn the liver and the kidney and the lungs off. And that's, or I turn my brain off, that's easier.
And we make certain decisions that clouds up the sky and depletes the rivers and the lakes.
Yes. Well, it's all that process of entropy now. Georgisco Roigan, who wrote that book, which is a Harvard Press book. It's a very good book. I've read that so many times because it's very inspirational. And if you look at, since entropy became fundamental foundation of thinking, mind over matter. Since that becomes matterism, that means matter to energy. oil to energy, everything to energy, which is governed by oscillation. Off of that, I created oscillatory environment. Since that became a mental trend and mental function, which was cultivated as our education, because that's why they're telling us to be objective, and then we have to be specialized and have focused. So when I'm focused, I'm looking at one thing. When I'm peripheral, I'm looking at all variables and relationship to everything. Yeah. So our education, took us the other way. Now, entropy, it doesn't matter if it's a communist, socialist, or capitalist economy, is based on matterism. Matterism leads us to materialism. So sociality does not exist anymore.
So in this evolution of this type of thinking, we have calculated obsolescence became very predominant, because you can make more profit when something you make falls apart quicker.
Yeah, because if you look at synergy as a blessing or provision, it's decentralized. But energy causes centralization. So if I can apply energetic process, I can produce mass production, and everything can centralize against around me, and competition comes in, not cooperation or complementation. So therefore, in order for me to get behind the podium and be the center of this esoteric circle, I have to step on everybody in the audience to get behind the podium.
So distinguish between this idea of mass production compared to production by the masses.
Yep. Mass production is very entropical, because once I have to produce it, then I have to distribute it. And then, there is laws of attorneys get involved, and the laws of distribution, packaging, and all that. All of a sudden, a package of something that you receive, first of all, it has missing links in the diets. 2, 90% is or 80% is the cost of packaging, transportation, distribution, storage, and all that stuff. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of entropy involved in that. So production by masses, that means every home has to have a greenhouse to produce at least 80% of their food.
Oh.
Instead of production of food in a centralized procedure, and then distributed to you and me. So therefore, you never have a food with negative ion. Negative ion means a male ion, the male energetic magnetism, to give it to the female body. That's why you look at centurions, they are production by masses. That's why they live to be over 120 years. Because those major ingredients of the food is not missing in their food. Even if they give it to you organic and non-GMO, those main ingredient is missing.
So now you had spoken about the military and the pharmaceutical industries needing to increase disorder in order to maintain profit, to increase profit margins. Is it the, what did you call it? The gross national product?
GNP, or now they call it GDP. In the old days, they used to call it GNP. Now they call it GDP. Gross domestic product. Before it was gross national product. So it's pretty much the same thing. But what happened, if it's entropical, that means if part of my consumption was waste, that has to go higher. All of a sudden, my garage has to become my junkyard. You
But
know,
you cultivate a desire, and people have things they can't use anymore.
yeah. And then, and if nobody comes to my garage sale, I'm in trouble.
But right now on the planet, there's enough garages full of stuff to have a sale every weekend.
Yeah.
Just give it
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So
So
if the profit margin of this way of thinking has to increase every year,
right.
there's a need to cultivate desire to continue these
Yes.
fatal conveniences.
Yeah. And see, you very basic economics is that every economy, whether capitalistic or socialist or communist, doesn't matter, since they're all materialistic based on law of entropy, it has to have a growth. That means 2-3%, so you can call it as healthy. The body of the economy is sick and they call it healthy.
So from a military viewpoint, you need to have 3% more military activity.
Yes.
And from pharmaceutical, you need 3% more people taking pills or getting sick
Over last year, yeah.
every
That means
year.
you and I have to be 3% sicker this year than last year. In 10 years, 30%. In 20 years, 60%.
So doesn't
in
that
30
mean the
years-
military would like to keep us living in fear, and the
Yeah.
pharmaceutical companies would like to keep us dependent upon
Yeah.
medications that have side effects?
As George Gerbner, the very famous psychologist at Chicago University, many of his book, you notice cultivation, his main thing was cultivation theory. So if you have to be sicker, or you have to consume my stuff, I have to cultivate it to you. I have to change how I have to tell you how to vision. So I get you to watch the television.
How many commercials will it take before I'm brainwashed?
7 times, they say if you see something 7 times, you accept it as facts. So you're cultivated.
So a political lie 7 times becomes a truth.
Yeah.
So are people getting any more self-sufficient, self-sustainable because they've seen the writing on the wall, or is there a message out there that's becoming more and more predominant that more people are understanding?
Well, I hope that's the case, because what happens, there's a change coming every 3,600 years. And that change is magnicity, change of magnicity. That's why you notice that during the Noah, all of a sudden magnicity changed. So we have a host planet that every 3,600 years goes between Mars and Jupiter. And and these 9 planets, they hosting this planet, or planet X, Nibiru, or whatever you want to call it. And therefore, the magnicity of the sun to this planetary structure becomes a little less to each planet. So that's one of the things that I've done for a long time, calculating and everything. So all of a sudden, when there is less magnicity, Earth turns a little slower. Just like your fan, if you turn the magnetic electrical, it goes a little slower with your switch or with your adjuster. Now, then it goes a little slower around the sun. So 365 days, it would be around 400. 24 hours becomes 28 hours. Now, when something goes a little slower, the tilt of the S, which is 23.42 right now, it becomes 21.42.
From 23.42 to 21.42.
23.42 to 21.42, so 2 degrees less.
Uh-huh.
So if it's a little like this, it becomes like that. Now, this 21.42 is a very, very, very significant number on planet X. And that's where cleansing comes about. 21.42, it happened during the time of Prophet Abraham, when he's with his wife Hajar, was in the desert of Saudi Arabia. And the biggest meteor that has ever hit the earth hit right at that point. And that point, we're in center of that rock to the North Pole, center of that rock to the South Pole. If you measure it, you can, there's many YouTubes, you can look at it. You divide it by each other, becomes exactly perfect phi.
Perfect 1.618.
Yeah, and it goes more than 033, 978, 478, it goes on and on forever. That rock was a message from Creator. Now, what happens, at the situation we are in when this comes very soon, which is coincidental with the reappearing of Isa ben Maryam. So when that happens, magneticity of the earth has become less. Now you notice on the table of elements, every element has, it's a micro earth. So the property of those elements will change.
When this magnetism gets less and less, the properties change.
When everything man has put energetic together, it goes to dwarf, it won't work anymore. So anything we have done energetic, it's not gonna be functional. Now, biological stuff, Dr. Robert Lanza has written a little book, has written a book about this, very intelligent person. He says, then biology governs physics instead of physics governing biology, or science is all physics, Newtonian physics. So then all of a sudden this become a very good day in life of the earth, because everything becomes purified, becomes synergetic, because all biological being, they're pleiomorphics. When something changes a little bit, magnetism changes or goes up and down and all that, they still function because we are pleiomorphic. Science is very monomorphic. Oscillation is very monomorphic. Vibration is pleiomorphic because, let's say, if you have a fever, or if you're tired, or if you're doing physical things, your vibration changes. If you're in love, you're sad or something, all these morphs that we go through, it changes our vibration. So biological things can go through change of vibration, but mechanical system cannot go through a change of oscillation. So the property of these material, we put, let's say, things together, and circuit, Wi-Fi, and all that stuff, it becomes obsolete. And that's the dawn of the promised day.
Is this thought of as the golden age returning?
Yes.
Now, there's a lot of people talking about this, but are they giving lip service? Are they really taking the action, getting involved in doing what's necessary to be in harmony with this point in time?
Well, there are some people who are waking up, and there are some, but again, as Rumi said, this life is one night long. Most people sleep right through it.
Yes, indeed.
Or it's one breath long, but most people choke on it.
So we go through a process of understanding how important it is to maintain the proper field and flow, because everything is magnetic.
Yeah, and we are polymorphic. We are not monomorphic. We are not a system. Our vitality is functional. It's not systemic. We don't have frequency. We have pulse.
So it's about getting in harmony, into a resonance with creation.
Yes. There is no other better choice.
Now, when we were talking about this lessening of the magnetic field, does that affect the Schumann resonance?
Yeah, everything is going to be less because what happened is everything is slows down. You notice science has speed up everything in our life. The intention was maybe when everything become faster is better, but look at the impact again. And sometimes we look at the impact and we can examine the intention. Now we look at the impact and we can recognize it was objective or subjective. So we got a little late, we can talk about this next time, how we can examine the intention and how we can examine the impact. Now, if my intention is energetic, just because of discussion we've had, my impact will be entropical. There's no question about that. If my intention was synergetic, I don't have to worry about it because my impact will be synergetic. If I was, there is no such a thing as co-creator. We are service to creation. I can't create anything. Creation is a process of going from synergy to matter. If you give me all the nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and all that, ask me to put an apple together. There's no way I can do it because synergy is a process of creation. Yeah.
So the process of being humble enough and reverent enough,
Yes.
honoring the function of nature,
Yes.
is speaking to us now in a way that's helping us to prepare for, you're saying this cycle has been in motion since forever.
Yeah, you go 3,600 years ago, it was the time of Noah. That's why, when something tilts a little bit less, the sun hits the north and south pole a little bit more straight.
Right.
More so some of the ice caps naturally will melt. So there is the rise of water must be 200-300 feet in some locations. That's what the prophet Noah warned people about that. Now, 7,200 years ago, we had prophet, which was called Atlanteans. Two prophets, one was Ad and the other one was Saleh. And they warned people. There was a mystic researcher in France by name of T.J. Arnold. If you look at his stuff, he spent 50 years to study what happened to South Yemen. And then, he also studied another part of Western Syria, which was a very mystic place. There was a town called Artemisia. Artemisia, they used to farm something that gets rid of COVID-19, for example. If you look at the United Nations report on Madagascar, they don't have money there in Africa. So what did they do? They had Artemisia from way back in the ancient, the city, and there was a city called Artemisia. And there was not even a single case there. Now, this Artemisia was also referred to as the word Diana. Diane is an Arabic word in Syria, Temple of Diana. And then south of that city, about a few 20-30 miles south of the city of Artemisia, there was another city they had a lot of good Arabs. It was called Philadelphia. That's why they named that city Philadelphia.
Oh.
And these are all researched by T.J. Arnold.
So Artemisia.
Yeah, Artemisia, I take it, you can buy it. You can go on, what is it called? On Amazon order, synthetic. I used to grow it here. So Artemisia, and then also Nigella sativa. Those were actually preached by Prophet Muhammad to the people, who were ill. And he said it can get rid of any disease, except there is not remedy for death.
Artemisia, and the other one was?
Artemisia. Artemisia. Yeah, it was an ancient city in Western Syria. And also Temple of Diana was there. So the word Diana and Philadelphia, it all comes from that area.
Oh. So Abyssinia fits into this, was before this time.
Well, Abyssinia was after this because these were way back before, right at what time of the Christ. Isa ben Maryam, his Aramaic name. And but what happens, in Islamic medicine, these two are very extensively used. And it's not very tasty, it's very bitter, and it's very hot. And therefore people take it with honey.
So Artemisia, and the other one was what?
Nigella sativa.
Nigella sativa.
Yeah, don't ask me how to spell it.
We'll have to go phonetically. So the ancient understandings are going to come back to be of service to us.
Yeah, because before Renaissance, everything was synergetic. Architecture was very synergetic. Everything was synergetic. And all of a sudden, Renaissance created a science that everybody took it as religion. And that was precursor of to New Age religion.
And in your work, you've applied, you had an engineering degree initially, right?
Yes, electronics, yeah, electrical, yeah.
And then because you didn't see the nature involved in the study of engineering, you studied naturopathic medicine.
And first I did architecture.
Architecture.
And then I did naturopathic medicine, yeah. There is no end to studying.
Yes, indeed.
They say from the cradle to the grave, you have to be studying. Otherwise, your functions are not happy and satisfied with you.
So from the cradle to the cradle, or from the cradle to the grave?
Yeah.
How does the soul fit into this understanding to gain enlightenment pertaining to this understanding of how we can resonate with nature?
Because soul has this mental faculty, we call it will. If there is a will, there is a way. And now, if that way is surrender, submission, and service to creator and creation, it's a good will.
And that's our intention.
That otherwise it's going to be an ill will. Yeah. So all of a sudden, if I have an ill will, what happens to me? I become very arrogant, self-centered. I care about myself only. So ill will is that arrogancy, selfism. So if somebody becomes arrogant and they are not liked, by masses, first of all, and then they're not even happy with themselves.
But they can take a selfie.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's true. Because that's why the people who become self-centered and arrogant, that means they have an ill will, not good will, God will. Okay, so what happens, there, they become very controlling, esoteric. They want to become the center of that circle. So everybody has to be gravitated to that center. So centralism is evolved, So now what happens if I had something on my mind, I forgot it, but arrogant person is not a sick mentality. It's a satanic mentality, because when your will goes against the will of God, I'm resonating with Satan.
And you're a fallen angel.
Yeah. So it's not mental sickness, or sick mentality is satanic mentality, because my will, which is the the soul faculty, mind faculty of soul, it has gone either I can be surrendered or I can be rebellious. So I decided to be rebellious because I think I know better.
It's time for some gracious humility in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
will we have to get to the right before the clock strikes 12?
Yes.
Humanity waits. Wasn't that one of the things that Bucky saw in his studies, that humanity always waits for an emergent situation to arise? Most people wait for the emergency to occur. They don't think outside the box. They don't think in the full spectrum ahead.
Yeah. Because, another example of a very arrogant person, in the history, it's Pharaoh. Pharaoh was so arrogant, and he had all these sorcerers that they called him psychic. We have psychic today, which is the sorcerer of our time. And finally, it took Moses and a miraculous act of Moses to get rid of him. And then there was another one, if you have heard of Korah. Korah, Aramaic name is Qarun. He was the wealthiest person of that time, and everybody was following him. He had all the psychic and sorcerers around him, and it was in the Sinai. And he became so arrogant that all of a sudden the earth opened. It's in the Bible. And all of a sudden the earth opened and swallowed all of them, just like the Pharaoh were swallowed by the Red Sea. So when it gets to a point, that the person becomes out of order and extremely out of boundary, God will act.
And nature has a way of being in harmony with the will of God.
Yes. Oh, I mean, every created entity in nature follows the will of God, except one.
Man.
Because God was, out of his mercy and blessing, gave total freedom to what? Determinism and freedom to man. And look what he did.
I think I'll give them free will. Oh, I'm not sure if they're going to use that properly.
Yeah. But you notice, animals, the trees get the knowledge from the sun. It's a knowledge, the light. We have to look at light a little bit beyond visual. It's a knowledge. This tree, when it gets the light from the sun, knows how to grow, give blossom, and divide its cells to give the fruits.
And the seeds divide and multiply by the grace of God.
Yeah. Now, if I was a tree, let's say I was an apple tree, and then I would become rebellious, and I was becoming self-centered, I would put pharmaceutical product in my apple and give it to you.
Because that apple wants to stay red forever and never rot.
Yeah. And you had to, then I would get you addicted. Then you had to come always buy my apple.
And that apple can travel thousands of miles and never get bruised.
Yeah. Because I radiate it. I have the science of radiation. I radiate the apple, it can stay on the shelf for a month.
So the missing link of all these fatal conveniences, this ever-increasing disorder has hypnotized humanity into believing in many fatal conveniences.
Yeah. See, I cultivated my intention on you. And my intention was, first of all, to make money and then make your life faster. So all of a sudden, look at the impact we have created out of all these fatal and lethal conveniences. Look at all the impact of fatal, the impact of the intention of spinning the life beyond the biological velocity, and look at all the lethal and fatal and deadly impact I have created on your life.
And we are accumulating toxins in ourselves and everything we touch.
Well, entropy is the process of accumulation. Since it's not assimilated, it builds up. My garage has become accumulated, but I'm cultivated to keep buying and buying, to keep the economy going. So all of a sudden, my garage becomes my junkyard.
Well, when 9/11 happened, there was someone that said, go out shopping, you'll feel better.
Yeah, they cultivated that correctly, yeah, because sometimes when we are in crucial and critical times, we are more vulnerable, we are easier to be cultivated.
Yes.
See, if I am sad and I'm sitting in front of this commercial soap opera, in front of the TV, I'll be easier to be cultivated than somebody who his mind was right on the phone.
Well, this is a lot of soul food for thought as usual. I want to thank you for sharing again. Do you have a thought you would like to share at the closing of our conversation?
The divine teachers, that's how intention and impact, how you can find somebody's a good teacher or not. Divine teachers, their intention. You look at the divine teachers are great students. But to some extent, you can see Buckminster Fuller, a first grader, all of a sudden became his teacher. So after that, he used to say this: every time I draw a circle, I open it and I step out. So divine teachers have the most refined intention.
The greatest students. Are the greatest students.
Yeah.
Divine teachers are the greatest students. Therefore, their impact, it's a divine impact. Everything they touch, right?
There is no boundary. There is no border. There is no border on how much nature can teach us. There's no end to it. The more, if you look at, for example, starry night about 3 o'clock, you see billions and trillions of stars. They're all floating and swimming around each other. And have you ever thought, maybe that's something to think about, have you noticed these flying stars? Because sometimes the star goes into other orbits.
Mm-hmm.
The flying stars, you notice. Have you ever thought why the flying stars, when you look at the sky, it always goes toward the north? It doesn't go this way, it goes that way.
It's the magnetic needles up there.
So, I mean, those are the things, we look at the nature, all of a sudden it opens our social mentality to be more in a state of surrender and submission.
Oh. Well, divine teachers make the greatest students.
Yeah, the greatest students. And look at all the prophets. They were all great students.
And the more we know, the less we know.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, my brother, till next time. Bless you, we thank you.
God's willing, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that's it for Here and Now. But until we meet again, this has been Louis-Virie Blanche thanking you for listening to Conversations with Elders on Glastonbury Radio 432. Bless you.
Quantum physics in the kitchen sink, the energy that follows the thoughts you think. Quantum physics and the cosmic sea, laws of nature too heavy for me.